in today's day and age, when we talk about sports and athletes, we see it as just being incredibly competitive. And it makes sense. By nature, sports are competitive. So that aspect of it, yeah, it stands to reason. It makes sense. But when we talk about the higher levels of sports, we go from intramurals where we start out as kids, we start to get into more of a competitive field, whether it's just modified in middle school, we get into JV and varsity in high school, and then all the levels beyond. It gets incredibly competitive in terms of, can I even make the team? If I make the team, what do I do? How do I train? Where do I go? What kind of training do I do? Where do I go to do it? This is the type of stuff that, guys, whether you're the athlete yourself, you're a parent looking to help your child, your student athlete, or you're a coach, you've got a slew of questions like this. And today's guest is here to answer those questions and many other. That being said, guys, welcome back. This is Coach's Corner. I'm Jeffrey David Hartford, and today's guest is my friend Kiel King, owner of Kings of Fitness in LaGrange, New York. Kiel, welcome, my man. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I'll tell real quick background that I can recall of where we met. This brings us back quite some time now. I was training manager at Gold's Gym in Fishkill, and I recall you had interviewed, or you had applied and you were interviewing, and HR came to get me, my friend Holly at the time, and she said, Jeff, would you come sit in on this interview? This guy's really fantastic, and I just want to get your take. And I'll never forget it. It was one of those things, instantly when I met you, I said, all right, this is a guy that's coming on board here. But unfortunately for me, it was you were coming on board to go to our LaGrange facility, not come work with me in Fishkill. So that was my my introduction to you. And then I'll tell you, over the years, watching you, I know it was only about a year or so that you stayed there with Gold's, and you branched out and started your own thing. And it's been really fun for me to witness, just from a not too far away, but from a distance, watch you what you've done, and you've really come a long way. So all that being said, there's a lot that I don't know about. I know you went to West Point. You served the country in the Army. God bless you. Thank you for your service.
Happy to have done it.
Amen, man. And that being said, I'll throw to you. Tell us about your background, what got you into it, and tell the audience, who are you? Who is Kiel King?
I graduated West Point 2004. Majored in chemistry, life sciences, minored in nuclear engineering. So I had a big science background. Then came out of the Army. I had a medical injury, broke my jaw a couple times. Came out of the Army on service disability. In doing so, the Army was amazing at setting me up for my future. And I thank the country for everything they do, and all these guys now, service guys that are out there. But when I was coming out, they wanted me to go work with Coca-Cola. And as much fun, I gave it a shot. I worked at Coca-Cola for a couple months, but as much as I loved being around the people that worked in that facility, it is like a plant facility. So we're making product, the chemistry's there, you're making product, you're shipping product. My job as a production manager, I'm on the floor making sure the operation is running well, just similar to what Army life is like. As an officer, you're kind of there mitigating situations and trying to make things run as smoothly as possible. So here I am doing this for Coca-Cola, and I realized how much I missed the training aspect of people. And I had this great conversation with my father. My dad's like, you're leaving a big time job to become a personal trainer. I don't know what's really in it for you there. And I said, maybe it's to be a personal trainer. Maybe it's going to be more at some point in time. But I ended up leaving Coca-Cola, and I met with Ron Paglia over at Gold's Gym. And we kind of did our thing. I went on a bunch of interviews, met you guys over in Fishkill, and I really connected with the idea of helping people at that level, and that's where I walked into it. Gold's Gym had a fantastic learning experience with all the trainers there, everybody there, but amazing people, amazing work environment for me. It was just, as I started to progress, some of the clients I was working with at the time, they needed more than the knowledge I had at that point. And I realized it. And we would have these conversations, and those clients really got me to go back to school. So I went back to grad school. That had to be like 2011, 2012 range. Go back to grad school. I majored in physical rehabilitation sciences, got an exercise science degree there. Ended up doing like corrective exercise through NASM, performance enhancement through NASM, went to National Strength and Conditioning Association, did their certified strength and conditioning specialist certification, which, that's continuing education every year, trying to connect and reconnect with different coaches. And that's where my wife came up with the idea. To him, 2012, Lauren King. It's all her idea. This is her gym. Like, I am an owner, but this is Lauren's baby. She said it in 2012. She said, the things that we're learning now that we're going to give to these colleges, because again, the end goal, going back to school and doing it all, it was actually to go back to the alma mater over at West Point and become a strength coach and work there.
Awesome.
And when it all went down, I actually did an internship with Marist, and I worked under a gentleman by the name of John Clancy, who was also a West Point grad. So it was kind of, serendipitous, where here I graduated in 2004. He graduated, I believe it was 1994. So we had that 10-year difference, and it really connected, because he was a very, very welcoming in terms of, here's how strength and conditioning works. He was a very great guy in terms of allowing me to operate with different sports teams and seeing kids at that Division I level and how they operate. Lauren's idea was to take all of this knowledge and recharge it and put it down into the high school level and under, where she was thinking maybe what we're doing for some of these guys at the higher levels is more important at the lower levels, because where do the injuries happen? Where do careers stop? Are you more likely to get injured on your way, or are you more likely to not have the skill level to play? And what we're seeing now is a slew of injuries that just kind of went around, and it'll knock you out of the sport. So our goal as Kings of Fitness is to be this athletic performance training center where we can help anyone who comes through our door achieve that fitness goal, whether, like you said, it's an intramural goal, is it make the high school team goal. We've been very, very fortunate, and I said we put a lot of kids into college, and you see those scholarships that come their way, and we've been at the upper level where we're sitting there working with professional athletes as well. And being able to do so has been an experience, because everybody needs something a little bit different.
Amen. Oh, that's amazing. What a story, man. I'll tell you, as I said, being able to watch from a slight distance, we're not all that far away from each other, but watching a lot of that from the outside looking in, it's just been a pleasure of mine to watch the growth you've had. But I'll say thank you to Lauren, because that's incredible. I give her all the credit in the world, and brilliant of you to do the same, as the saying goes, your better half, right?
Yeah, I said none of it happens without her.
Amen. Yeah, it's really funny, and the timeline is really interesting too, because it was around 2012 that I started massage school, and that was a seed planted by my wife, Michelle, that, God bless her, I was the one going to school, I was the one doing the work, but without her making that recommendation and planting that seed, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. So it's we're super fortunate to have our better halves pointing us in the right direction, right?
And I'll tell you, even in this whole fitness regime, right? So we actually coincided going back to grad school. I think she went a year after me, and this was like her second turn at grad school, because she was an English teacher, and she was working. Wow. She had done a leave replacement in Ketchum. She'd done a leave replacement in Hyde Park schools, and then had gone back to school for exercise science. And when we were formulating this plan, because Kings of Fitness had started in 2012, and now she's back in school, she's like, where do we complement each other? Just like in the marriage, where do we complement each other? How do we complement each other? So she really focused nutrition, and she focused on psychology, sports psychology, which in our facility now, you say, how does it play out? And you hear how the athletes face the stresses that they face. And I mean, everybody has some level of stress that they're dealing with, but it's always been back to the plan of how are we going to affect them both training wise, in physical aspects of stress, and then how do we help these athletes mentally in that aspect of stress? Because as you know, the hormone response is the same.
Yep. Amen. I'll tell you what, this is amazing. And I'll tell you, I'm going to plant the seed now. I look forward to this opportunity. I'll have to have Lauren on at some point too, because you just hit the three pillars that I focus on is exercise, nutrition, and mindset. So between the two of you, and we'll talk about it, you and I today, about each of those pillars as well from your perspective, but it sounds like from the nutrition and the psychology, the mindset aspect, Lauren can bring a little more to the table as well. So that's awesome. Yeah, I tell you too, I have the advantage now too that you and I have several clients in common. So with my primary focus now being the sports massage, I'm able to keep these guys going, keep them, a little more mobile, keep them a little more aware of some of the restrictions that they may have and keep them ready and pliable to come and hit it hard with you in the gym and do the performance end. So, it's you having the background of the corrective exercise specialist, the performance enhancement, the strength and conditioning. We've got so many similarities and so much overlap, but I love seeing how our paths, although they were pretty parallel for a while, branched out slightly, and now we're able to help the same people with just a slightly different avenue.
Exactly. And then just like that, and I say this happens in the civilian world, but in the college
Mm-hmm.
levels and the professional levels, all of us are a team. We sit there as a team.
Absolutely.
So even now, where I said if we bring that dynamic, right, just as we network today, we network in and out of our potential athletes, clients, and that is really where they all start making all of their money, right? Staying healthy and being able to play.
That's absolutely right. Yep, that's exactly that. My primary focus. That's exactly it. It's that saying of the best ability is availability. My approach with the sports massage and corrective exercise is my goal is to just keep them on the field. Having been an athlete myself when I was younger, earlier in my career, I had the mindset that, oh, of course, I'm going to work with athletes. There's so much fun to work with. I'm doing strength and conditioning. And I got to that point where, I've worked with so many different clients ranging from early teens to literally in the 90s and everything in between. And for me personally, it started to be more of a matter of quality of life and keeping somebody healthy and moving, kind of getting them, if you will, an introduction to their body.
Yeah.
How do I move? How do I prevent these limitations, these compensation patterns and such from turning into injuries and limiting me what I can do on my day to day? And it started to kind of get me geared more towards working with everybody as opposed to just athletes. And that's why I went my path. But you're absolutely right. Just being able with the athletes specifically, keep them on the field, keep them doing what they're good at. That's really where we can make a big difference. Yeah. Now, that being said, you kind of touched upon this already, but you started over 10 years ago now, and over the years, you just got in a new facility, you had a new place built. How has it evolved over there? How have you changed in terms of how you work with the athletes?
So as we started, this was 2012, we had rented space in a karate gym. We were on the first or the second floor of that karate gym, and we had minimal equipment, and it was just this experience of being coached for the first time. And even then, our clientele had ranged from the youngest kid being 7, 8 years old, and then our oldest clients were touching 70s, I believe, maybe the low 70s there. So we dealt with a large population in the beginning, and then from there we ended up, I want to say it was 2015, we moved to our second location, which would have been again like a 25,000 square foot facility. It was built like a warehouse, and it was located in Water Falls on Route 9. And that was where we took the model of what you would see in a strength and conditioning facility, NCAA. And we brought it to Route 9, had the squat racks, had the turf, had Olympic lifting platforms. And Lauren and I were also competing. And I'm not saying I'm retired because I could come back, but I'm saying we were competing Olympic weightlifting. So we had actually linked up with a very well-known strength coach, Olympic weightlifting coach, Steve Swistak. He's just down out of Westchester. So Steve was teaching us the Olympic lifts to provide and come back, and we were training underneath him to give this kind of thing back to the clients, the sport athletes. So it was kind of this, and there's always like this little role there, but it's how can we affect the athletes where they are? And in turn, if we can open up dialogue with coaching staffs that they're working with, then we know what they're dealing with. So in the beginning, it was a lot of speaking with the athletes themselves, figuring out what they'd have to do, what they'd have to undergo, and then formulating some kind of periodized plan in how to get them where they wanted to be. And we did that and we were discussing this before the podcast, but through text messaging, but we were really doing that. It was auto regulation. And with the auto regulation part of it, this is how you grow muscles basically over the course of some kind of periodized plan, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. But how do we adjust these weights that we're getting what we want from it? So as I go back to it and I look at it, we spent a lot of time, I hate to call it the old school way, but it was a less technologically advanced way.
Sure.
Now you fast forward to 2021, we move into the third facility where we're now in LaGrange. This is as high tech as it gets. because of the networking that we do and the coaches that are willing to share information. I said, as a strength coach, it has always been very open to me. I write an email, I call someone, they pick up the phone and they talk. And that starts with like guys like Louis Simmons being so available and open and discussing things. It's amazing. And then
That's
I
great.
just finished a certification with Corey Schlesinger on microdosing this past week. And I sit back and I say, he's the head of sports performance for the Phoenix Suns. So you sit back and you say, coaches make themselves available to you. And as they do so, they enlighten you on some things. So we were training Joe Panic at the time when he was with the San Francisco Giants, and he's opening up that facility of knowledge. There's nothing but brains in there, right? And they're saying, hey guys, if you really want to affect athletes at a certain level, you need to look at velocity-based training. You should start looking at devices like K boxes and K pulleys that do flywheel training. You may want to look at force plates for testing. And it opened up the world. So this third facility that we're in, right? High-tech athlete. So we have data management systems that are up and running. We have the force plate data that we run. We run 2 tests in here, if not like 3 or 4, but 2 tests get run pretty much every week, whether it's a counter movement jump or we have an isometric mid-thigh pull that we'll do out of here. And we take that data and we run it across what we now know, right? And instead into it, now we now know is an athlete's force velocity curve. So when we talk about these many strengths that athletes bring to the table, I'll sit down with parents and I'll sit down with athletes themselves, and they'll come in here and they'll say, I want to get quicker. And I go, well, what do you mean by you want to get quicker? Quicker is a very broad stroke here. Do you need faster reaction time? Do you not move your body weight well? Are you not as coordinated as you believe? Because these are all little things that kind of play into being the overall athlete that you are. And then you talk about athletes at the top level, right? So I'll go back to Joe. Joe, in all of our testing metrics that we've done, and again, he's one of the professional athletes. He's won a World Series. This guy is so coordinated. This guy has metrics that are so measurable that on the highest of ends, right? And now he's retired, but he still tests that way, right?
That's
so
great.
I'm saying like that kind of level of neurological input that he has been able to develop over the course of his career. And I mean, John Jay graduate, St. John's. So it's not like it's a kid not from this area, right? So in talking with him, he was one of these guys too, one of these big factors going into it where you sit back and you say, if he could do it and he grew it the way he did through his hard work and his effort, why can't someone else from this area do it? And that's what we're watching take place now, is that one person is that 5-minute mile, right? Once you broke the 5-minute mile, 11 more people break it. But you're sitting back and you're seeing that it doesn't have to be the DNA based, because you talked about that on the podcast, right?
Yes,
it doesn't have to be DNA based. It can be, it's a trainable circumstance here. So that's what we're trying to affect out of it. So, but again, like I said, the technology has really changed in the 10 years that I've been at this. And we've been fortunate enough to bring in some equipment that really helps push some things. I've had some ideas questioned in the past. And I guess, in the 10 years, that's another thing. I was pretty rigid. When I got to Gold's Gym, it was, that was still the Army Kyle. So it was like my way or the hard, you take my way or the highway. So it was like I would beat people down physically to the point where, how do you adapt from that? I wasn't putting in play the general adaptation principles that we now do with everyone, right? We look at people where they are, we try to meet them and then help them grow. Things I never thought about, mobility, right? The self-myofascial release techniques, things I would have never thought about back in 2011. I'm just out there, I'm just beating you down, giving you the hardest workout of your life. And I'm like, don't worry, you'll be back in 2 days for another one. But really now, as I've moved forward in education, certifications, that kind of stuff, reading, and experimenting, I do now say there is a place for everything. And if we can really dial it in and find that place for everything, we maximize what we're trying to do.
Amen. I love everything about that. And, as you were telling all that, what kept going through my mind is the big delineating factor there is eliminating ego. And I find this in so many places, but you think about, had you stayed that same trainer you were back then, you were still credentialed, you were still good at what you did, and you just found a niche that worked, and you worked people hard because that's what you had done to you essentially, and it worked. Your body did adapt, but you weren't maximizing the stimulus versus adaptation phase that we really need to do to get to the peak level that we can do, especially with the athletes. And I think in many ways that in the fitness industry, I try my hardest to make sure that I don't talk down about other fitness professionals, but I want to try to help lift them up, because what you just described and the way you used to do it, we still see that in the industry across the board. There's people that just happen to be in good shape themselves. That's how they train their clients, is how they train themselves to get there. And in a sense, that client's in a better situation than if they were on their own. But if that trainer would take that path that you took and, again, drop that ego in the sense that you're asking for help from other professionals and you're finding, which may have been a surprise to you initially, but they're so ready to share this information. There are some wonderful coaches in the industry that, they just have a wealth of knowledge and they want to share it, especially with other coaches, other trainers that are looking to improve themselves. And that's just super encouraging to me.
Exactly.
And you've already started to kind of hit on some of the things that we discussed in the intro, that, we're trying to talk to the athletes, the parents, and the coaches here. I think a lot of the stuff that you just said is already answering this. Where do I go? Why do I do it? What do I do? How do I do it? So if we're talking specifically to them, both on the athlete and parent level, and then even to the coaches, if there are people listening right now that, they're just now being introduced to you and your approach to this, how do we get them in with you if they're local? And how can we point them in the right direction if they aren't local, but they're still, everything that you're saying, that they're saying, wait a minute, that's what I need. How can I do this?
This is where I say, like, the social media aspect of life has really taken off. And it's amazing because even now we'll have remote athletes, athletes traveling some distances from different counties to come in and train. And then, like I said, with the remote athletes, we're kind of hitting them where they are. They just kind of found out what we were doing through Facebook or Instagram, things like that. Coaches, honestly, in our area, I try to reach out to athletic directors, coaches, and the thing about it, and I got this Dr. Brian Mann, he's like the godfather of velocity-based training. I took a course with him out of the University of Miami, and I just hammered home because it was like a basic strength and conditioning course, and he took the time to video call people in the classroom. He was checking homeworks, all that other stuff. But in my time with him, what we discussed is how can we be, as outside businesses, workable people and coaches for kids that are going to school. And his suggestion, and I took this home with me, he gave me 2 books to read that had nothing to do with strength and conditioning, which was even funnier. It was like the Japanese 5 Ways of Life, and it was all about relationship building.
Yeah, man.
And in that relationship building, and I don't want to butcher the names of the books because they are definitely in Japanese, but it was like one of these things where forming the relationship with the coaches, not talking down to people like you said earlier. It's not that I know more. It's just that I'm willing to share what I do know and offering that up, whether it be we did, I want to say, last year we did a little talk for the Southeastern zone of physical educators. And it's like, if you can take the time, because they're always looking for something, but if you can take the time to present what you know to people that want to hear it, you might get out there. The other thing is that you give away the education for free. Honestly, it's one of those things where you go on social media, put a tidbit, don't worry about the detractors, because somebody will always say they know better. Somebody always knows better. I know that. And that's fine. The engagement is what matters. And it's like, there's 1,000 different ways to skin a cat. So the way that we do fitness with, people, athletes, whoever we're working with, it may work for them. But just like I tell anybody that sits in front of me, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you and your goals. So what your goals are what we're going to take our ego out of it, and we're going to focus where you are. And if it works, great. But if somebody else can do it better and you'll have a better result somewhere else, I suggest you go there and you stay consistent with what you're doing programming wise. Because the program hopping, I see that as the biggest killer. Because you got guys that have studied a certain protocol and they'll follow those protocols, or maybe they adapt them a little bit, but they're following a certain method. And if you stay with that method for years, you could find yourself in a different place. You stay with that method for a month, you may not get to see the adaptation you would have. And that's where, it's okay to do something. It's just, I say you might want to avoid jumping around, just like with diets, right? You see everybody get the diets, training, it all goes together.
100%. Yeah. And so much of that goes back to the mindset. And this is something I've been talking about for a while now, is you really need to do the work. Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this. This is where I got it from, that we're only in our conscious thinking prefrontal cortex mind 5% of the time, which means we're in our subconscious 95% of the time. And that's essentially programming. So this is stuff that, unless we learn this, or unless we've just, as we've gotten older, done something that reprogrammed what was written, these programs were written between birth and 7 years old. So if our programs were written when we were influenced, at home, mom and dad, maybe they were busy, maybe they were out of the house, we were with somebody else that was a caregiver, wherever it came from, it wasn't something that we consciously downloaded. We think about it from a perspective of almost being like a computer. So these programs are downloaded in our subconscious. And then when we hear something new, we get excited. Now we're in our conscious thinking mind. We're like, that sounds wonderful to me. I want to do that. And we try it for a little while, and then we fall short because we don't do enough work. As you said, consistency. If we don't stick to it with consistency and with discipline for long enough to override the programming and make this a new habit, we haven't really gotten to a point from a mindset perspective that we've even bought in and given it the opportunity to do its job. So you're spot on. I mean, your program, from everything I'm hearing, sounds top notch. But yeah, in fairness, you're right. There's another program out there with another coach who's also qualified that if an athlete gave that their all and committed to that, that equally would benefit them. But if you're jumping from one to the next and saying, oh, this didn't work either, the problem is the fact that you didn't commit to it, not the program. Yeah. Amen. Yeah, I'm with you 100% there. So that kind of brings us into then, if you will, my other pillar of mindset. What role do you guys play in the gym in working with some of your athletes in terms of implementing some mindset things?
We get to coach our kids 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are direct lines to them for everything. And I mean, from the professional level down to the youngest level. Like if you have a cell phone, you could text us and get us where we're going. A lot of times what happens for the guys is we are mitigators of stress. So like I said, we're watching these guys and they are, I liken it to, you have a dance where you want to invite someone to the dance. You have tests coming up. We block these major things out, especially in programming. That's why we fill out questionnaires every programming. So along with that athlete data management system, we are watching what's going on in your daily life and we're giving you heads up. So it's like Sunday, we don't work on Sundays. That's like an immediate rest day for everyone. But on Sundays, Lauren and I are doing a little bit of work. We're going through the athlete data management system. We are exporting data. We are quantifying data. And in doing so, it gives us red flags to something a potential athlete or an athlete might be potentially seeing. So I'm watching sleep. I'm watching water intake. I'm watching RPEs. I'm trying to see how the exertion levels are going throughout the week. And as the kids are answering the data, and again, it's self-reported, I check it against the data that we get off of the force plates. So if I'm watching force production drop and I'm seeing some of the self-reported data drop, I can pull a specific athlete out of 100 kids. I'll give that kid a text message. Say, hey, you want to call, you want to text, whatever you need. Let's get online and figure out what's going on. Something happening? And oftentimes, kid will come back and say, yeah, something's happening. And then we talk about it. And it could be whether it's like again, it could be like an emotional family thing going on, but it presents itself in the data. It could be an injury an injury right on the way, right? Because I like with the force plates, we're always looking for asymmetries as well. It helps us in many ways to just keep them on the right track. So we follow those dips. And as long as we're following those dips, we can kind of sit back and direct them in different ways. Because again, we're not the end all be all of everything. Sometimes we'll see a real problem and we say, okay, we know this person deals in psychology. We would love for you to go speak to them. Vice versa. Brilliant. We know this chiropractor. We know this, massage therapist. We always try to keep that book open because again, we don't want to do it all, but we want to be a part of the process to help make smart choices.
That's absolutely brilliant. And I'll tell you, based on that, I'm actually trying to line up this other guest that I'll throw her name out now in case you ever need it to refer somebody to. Phenomenal psychotherapist right in Beacon. Her business name is Good Vibes Wellness. Her name is Jessica Mills. Incredible. I can't wait to have her on and talk to her about some of this stuff. But from the sports psychology side of things, I mean, that's such a powerful tool. And, what you just described is just literally, I'm in awe. I'm thrilled to hear. I didn't even know. I love asking a question when I don't know the answer coming. And what you guys are doing is that's next level and then some. That's incredible to be able to catch those things. And, the athletes working with you are in good hands, to say the least. That's fantastic. So that stuff is incredible. Now, you mentioned with that, I'll say to the audience, Kyle mentioned RPE, that stands for rate of perceived exertion. So love that you're checking on those things as well. And you mentioned checking hydration and so on. So now we'll move into that next pillar with hydration, and then with fuel, we're talking nutrition. What kind of role do you play with nutrition with the athletes?
So as they come in, again, force plate data is going to give us their weight, but we do measure them. We get their heights, we get their weights, we get their age, and we actually draw out. I hate to tell kids, especially kids, what they should be eating and how they should eat it. So what we do is we suggest. We give them a suggestion. We figure out their BMR for them, where they are today. And from that BMR, we give them two different paths to go. There's one where we're saying, okay, if you're interested in trying to lose a little weight, here's a safe way to cut calories. And then the other way is, if you're looking to put on mass, here's a way to have a little excess in your calories. We'll measure that. We'll give them the numbers. We play with some of the macronutrients if they want. Big thing is we focus on the calories for the younger guys. Macronutrients start coming into play with performance. If we have a kid come in and he's like, you know what, I was really not doing as well as I thought I should. I felt a lack of energy. We go, okay, let's go back to, because we suggest it. We suggest that they download some kind of trackable app, like a MyFitnessPal. We know MyFitnessPal pretty well, so we end up using that one a lot. But I say, if you can track your food any which way that we can take a look at the numbers, we can always find data within. So in finding that data within, we start to play with some things, because it's one of those, again, this is more of a Lauren topic. I was a sports nutrition guy, so I cared about, how much carbs are you getting, how many proteins are you getting after the fact. But Lauren does an amazing job at helping individuals understand timing of when they're supposed to be getting some of their stuff in. She'll break it down that way. And I mean, there's great organizations out there that share their data that you can get all that stuff in. But it's again, she's big on the timing. She's big on the macronutrients when you're getting those guys in around your performance. And then how you fall back on, how do you feel? Did you feel great when you were doing it? So the nutrition aspect of it, we provide some guidance, and it's one of those things where if we see some outliers on MyFitnessPal, all we ask for is your trust and that you're being very truthful in your measurements, right? Yep. And if you put a tablespoon of butter, then you better say it's a tablespoon. Don't act like it's a teaspoon, because it throws some numbers off. So if we get everything the way it's supposed to be, and we're getting, but you could see it, which is really cool. We've had adult fitness members in here who have asked Lauren for some help, where it became more along the lines of, we're going to take some pictures, weekly pictures, to see the definition changes in the body and how it's how you're getting like that body recomposition going. In that, I've seen some great, but the feedback comes back too. Like once the body is doing the recomposition, then all of a sudden, the performance is up too. And we see the performance right away with the velocity-based training that we do in here too, because our main lifts inside the facility are velocity-based. So we don't try to lift more weight than we need to affect a specific strength. And in that, we get more bang for our buck. Do I need to do 50 reps at a certain volume or, a certain weight? I don't need to if I only need 12. So then we get those guys. It aids in recovery and things like that. I can see those VBT numbers change, where if they were 0.75 meters per second at a certain weight, as their nutrition dials in, all of a sudden that weight has gone up, but they're still at 0.75 meters per second. So they're lifting more weight quickly. And I love that stuff.
That's fantastic. All the measurable things. I mean, that's so many people are looking for that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Again, that's, you can see it in an athlete. You can see their body change, the way they feel, all those things. So a little more, as you alluded to earlier, a little more old school. There are still people seeing some great results with an old school approach, and it is some of the tried and true stuff. But now using the technology to be able to track it and show, again, the parents are a big piece of this puzzle, right? As the athletes get older, sure, it's on them and they're paying, and it's, especially the professionals, that's a whole nother level. But in order to get them there, many of these younger athletes need mom and dad to buy in, quite literally, and see the value here. And then the kids are doing the work and making that commitment. So all this measurable stuff is just incredible. And then we pass that on. The coaches get to see it. They're seeing these athletes improve. So I think that you've already kind of touched upon a lot of this in terms of the relationships that you have established with some of the coaches. But is there a protocol that you may follow, that you're working with some athletes and they're getting to that next level? Do you have the relationships established with the coaches that you can kind of point these players in the right direction of the next level, what coaches to go play for and such?
No.
Okay.
Because that we try not to tamper with any athlete that comes in here. We want them to follow their measures, right? So I leave that on the athlete, actually. So if the athlete
Sure.
comes in here and they say, can you speak to my coach? Yes, we can. And we will send them all
Yeah.
the information, but they become the primary drivers because it's their information. So
Awesome.
it's like we have a young basketball player. She's at Purdue right now. Her name is Ava, and Ava is a phenomenal athlete, and her strength staff at Purdue has been nothing but wonderful, and we work together. They give us goals that they want to see accomplished when Ava's home. I provide and Lauren provides information back to the staff, and they give it a green light. And sometimes they'll send us stuff and they say, can you green light this for Ava? Can she do it? And we work together like that. So I'd like to say that's actually happened with 99% of the athletes we work with at that level of college. Okay.
Wow.
Which is fantastic. The high schools, when we get into like the high school talk of it, the coaches are phenomenal coaches across the board. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they are doing everything under their power. But I look at it like this: the athletes in high school, they're from an area, they're not recruited. Right. Yeah. So if I have a recruitable population, it's very easy to work with that recruitable population because everybody looks the same. Versus what we're doing in high school. So they're figuring out a way harder way to try to get people to buy into their system. They're trying to find out a way to train them so that they're successful while implementing a revolving door of athletes to, really focus in on a game plan of how to win. So their time frame is just so much shorter that it's like we might be able to affect something in the off season, but as you know and I know, it's a full year plan. So we try to interact and give these guys a chance to do full year kind of things. But the data is, like I said, the data is very shareable. So if I get a team in here and that coach wants to show up, they're more than welcome to. They're not allowed to stay, but they're allowed to show up and get data. And they can request it per email. They can call. But it's just athletes tend to do what they're going to do. And I don't want them feeling like they're under the thumb. Like we don't let parents stay in here either. So if the parents come, they drop their kid off, and then they're off to the races. And so if you got things to do, that's another evolution of the gym. When COVID hit, we couldn't have all the people stay in the gym. So we could only have a certain number of athletes in, and we only had square footage per person. So we said, okay, parents, there's no more viewing area for you to watch your children. We're going to have you outside, and when we're done, we'll bring them out. And that's kind of the model we rolled with because we watched kids would come out of their shell a little bit. Yep. Some others perform just fine, but it's just one thing that we kind of said, save the space for the athletes for now, and then we'll see how it all works down the line. So we do the same thing with the coaches as well. You're invited. You can check out the facility. You can take a look around. You can pet the dog in the gym, and then you got to go.
That's fantastic, man. I love that. I got thrown there. I had something else I was going to say, but I love that whole idea because you said that, some of these kids will come out of their shell, if you will. It makes me think back to a client I had, young man that was on the spectrum, and what a wonderful kid he was. And mom, when she was there, would try to drive the direction the session would go. This is back when I was still just training. And, it was almost like she was expecting the worst to happen. And I know this is a very specific, unique example, but when you said that, I had this flash come back to me. And I'll tell you, the couple of times that she would have to leave to go run an errand, the kid that I was working with was significantly different when she wasn't there. And that was a real difficult conversation to be able to bring up with her. And granted, I did it in such a way that she understood where I was coming from and she respected it and she was thrilled to hear it. But it was really interesting how he was in that shell real tight with her around and talking for him. But when we could have the one-on-one and talk about it and I watched him do the work, it was incredible. So I wouldn't even have thought that would be a game changer for you guys in your facility, but I'll bet that bodes really well for these athletes to be able to just do their thing and stay focused.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right, so let me think here, because again, I had a thought and I totally got thrown there.
Sorry about
let's
that.
See. No, that's all right. I love it. Anything you want to add while I'm thinking about this?
I should say we're watching a high level of sports. We do lots of travel baseball, travel basketball. You're seeing not so much with football, but who else is there? Softball. So there are those travel teams out there as well, and those organizations, the AAU organizations, are phenomenal. They reach out, they touch base, and then in that we can start working with those guys as well in terms of giving information and sharing what we do out of our facility and tracking data. I find that the tracking data and the recovery portion of fitness has been so underwhelmingly hit that now when I sit down with parents, they're like, what can we do in the off day? And I said, you just called it an off day. Why do you want to do more? What about the adaptation part, right? So I find with the general adaptation principle, I pull it up on the computer, I turn it around, I say, here's what happens when we stress your child. Here's what happens when an athlete is stressed. And if we don't allow them that time to recover, we push them further down into the alarm phase. And eventually we're getting close to that injury stuff. So the things, the chiropractic, the massage, when I look at the foam rolling, Theraguns, cupping, acupuncture, there's all these different ways of getting people to kind of, increase their recovery. Right. And I'm wearing a Whoop band now. Right. But I also have an Apple Watch. I got to check everything. So it's like one of these things where I'm always trying to figure out better ways of recovery and then how to do the minimal amount of stress that produces the greatest result, hence the technology. And that was just, it's all learned to me, right? It was, I believe it was Louis Simmons who was saying it. He had said something at some point where he was like, more is not better, but better's better. So if we can figure out ways to be better in our approach as coaches, like you said, take the ego out of everything and just be better at what we're trying to do, learn from each other. This is a community. And like I said, at the highest level, everybody's doors open, which is crazy to me because you think about it. And it's like, this guy learned something. He's not afraid of you taking his information and using it. Just give the guy credit at the end of the day.
Yes.
We've been spitting off everybody's name, right? And they're like, oh, okay, Dr. Brian Mann, Corey Sessler. I spit my wife's name 18 times already. But it's like, if it's not my idea, let me give you credit for it. So as long as we're giving credit and we're using the best practices for the people we see, good job. You're doing great. How does that not work?
No, that's got so much to do with success in general, I feel. This whole channel is the baby, if you will, of a meditation I had, which I'll first say meditation is something that I actually talk about a lot with the young athletes, and just learning how to focus on some breath work initially, learning how to consciously stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest, relaxation, digestion, to be able to combat all of the stressors. I mean, the average kid, and you talked about this, and I love that you track some of these things and you'll check in with them, but school stress, tests coming up, the dances you alluded to, all these different things that are causing the very same physiological response in the body to that of our ancestors being attacked by an animal that wanted to kill them. Yes. I mean, that is just mind-blowing. When you break that down for somebody, they're fully aware that when they get stressed, they feel their chest tighten up, they feel their neck tighten up, they feel their heart rate increase, their breathing rate increase, they just get tense. And when you can teach them to take a nice, deep, diaphragmatic breath, and they instantly, in one breath, they feel all that start to dissipate. And you can really drive home the benefit of just doing some breath work and then growing into a meditative practice, which brings me to this again, the term conduit. So Coach's Corner, I don't know if you're aware of this, Kyle, but it stands for the conduit of optimism, altruism, consciousness, and health. So each of those topics in there is really what drives the guests that come on. So certainly health is the biggest one in there, but you're also an incredibly optimistic person. There's the altruism component, the consciousness component. They all play into this, right? But the big one there for me is the conduit. You mentioned these ideas might not be yours. They're learned to you, and then you just give credit. So you, in a sense, are being a conduit. The information's coming through you, and you're sharing it with people to help them improve, right? So for me, when that hit me, I used to have that paralysis of analysis and thinking to myself, well, I'm not good enough yet. I didn't do X, Y, and Z. I'm not the expert. I didn't create this thing. And then it hit me. I'm like, I don't need to. None of us really need to be the creator. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to learn the information and then share it. And when appropriate, give credit, as you're saying. So to be a conduit and to accept that role, for me, gave me the green light to say, okay, I'm going. I'm doing the work. I'm hitting the ground running. And that gave us this type of thing. So thrilled to be a part of it. And I love hearing that you're cut from the same cloth in so many different ways. And it really, again, it's when we check that ego and we're willing to reach out. As you said, it's wonderful to hear, but not necessarily surprising that a lot of these bigger coaches are so receptive and so willing to give their information out and share and help. And I think, I'm going to add a layer and a component here. We talked about already the athletes, the parents, and the coaches, but what about the aspiring strength and conditioning coaches, the aspiring trainers out there, right? Who so many of them might feel this sense of ego of, all right, well, I look good, I'm an athlete, I'm trying, so I'm ready to go do it. But they might not even be aware yet that, hey, yeah, drop the ego, drop the guard. This isn't just about you. And hey, we're all here for you. So reach out, we'll help out. We'll play our role. So your response there said it all, but elaborate on that. Tell me what you think and what kind of role you play.
When I started out, and the rigidity of who I was, right? And even getting the certification to be a strength coach and being allowed to work at the Division I level. Mm-hmm. I walk in and I have my ways. I know what the book said, and we are going to follow that book because what it says there works. And John Clancy, I'm telling you, this guy was amazing at being one of the first people as a strength coach to another strength coach saying, hey, you know what? This is where Bruce Lee in it now, okay? The days of the book are over. Now you're going to be like water, and we're going to see what comes in front of us, and then we're going to kind of make our way around. And and the other young strength coaches that were with us, right? We're all out there trying to be this assistant. Another guy I worked with, his name's Tom Beckfromit. He was down in, he works at MLS now as a strength coach for the refs, I believe. But here's another young kid in the business, and now I'm older, coming out of the Army. I've already had a career. Here's a guy who's coming out of college, becoming a strength coach. And I am watching him just soak up everything. And he would just take what he liked and kind of, with no fear, just discuss it. I think it will work like this. And his openness in speaking to me, because he's like, oh, this old dude, he must have been a strength coach forever. And I'm like, nah, not really. I'm kind of new too. So, but he was a soundboard. And in that, now we had another young man, Sean Murphy. You know Sean Murphy.
Yep.
Sean Murphy, strength coach. He's in grad school now. He came and worked with us at Kings of Fitness. And I say it just like that. He worked with us, not for us, because when you're with us, we're a team because we work for we work for our athletes. And Sean came in, he soaked everything up, Olympic lifting wise, a great guy. And I saw how personable he was with athletes. And I said, hey, Lauren, hey, would you ever think about doing some hours with us? Taking over some days, writing some programming, trying to get off the ground and see if you like it. From there, he went back to grad school. He's up at Ithaca, I believe, for grad school. Mm-hmm. But he actually just got a job at Cornell Strength, and their head strength and conditioning coach called. I was on vacation. I get a call from his head strength and conditioning coach. And the guy's like, I love Sean. This is just a formality. Just tell me you love him and we'll get him in. So here's a young guy who he's deeper into strength and conditioning at that level than I ever made it. Awesome. And it's just like one of those things. And now I have a young man in here, Brian Doxey. He's worked under Joe DeFranco. He's got Joe DeFranco certifications and Joe D. And this guy he spits names and knows books, and he's bringing me reading material. So I'm like, hey, I'm supposed to be mentoring you. But at the same time, it's like one of these things where everybody's coming in with this knowledge. And I said, thanks to all the guys that were so great to me and opening their doors and answering phone calls and emails, helping me along the way. I do the same for anyone who's willing. If you walk through my door, I'm going to have an honest conversation with you. I'm going to tell you about the hours. My hours are phenomenal because my wife makes my hours. So I have great hours. And I told Sean, I was like, Sean, you're going to work in a school. You're asking for a 5 a.m. wake-up call. You got to be in facility with the door open 5 a.m. to train the golf team. Because now you're going to be looking at, you're going to look at class schedules. You have to figure out everything there. I was like, but if that's where you want to be, that's great. Me, I love this. I'm here at 7 a.m. I take a break by 11. I'll do like 4 hours of coaching straight. I take a break in the middle of the day where the dog and I will go either on a run or a walk or something. Eat lunch, and we come back 3 to 7, 3 to 8 p.m. Beautiful, awesome. Broken up day. Yep. I said, but you format the day around the people who are going to come. So it's a lot of fun that way.
Well, that's incredible. I love so much about that too. And, Sean's an incredible guy. I had the opportunity to work with him as well. I was working with the John Jay baseball team for years, and Sean, through working at the gym, I got to know him, and he came in and helped me out working with the J team prior to coming over and working with you. So wonderful guy, great personality, and total sponge. And it's funny, the only critique I gave him early on was he just didn't have enough confidence because he knew more than most trainers I had ever worked with at that point. And he was still early on, but he's such a sponge for the knowledge. And now I love seeing it. He's doing the work, he's building that confidence, and he's giving back. So I love hearing it again in so many different ways. You and I are cut from the same cloth, but the way I look at it is I'm at a stage of my life now, a level of what I call success, that it took a lot of mistakes. It took a long time to get where I am. And I wouldn't trade any of it because it's made me who I am today. But I choose to give back and help these younger kids coming out and say, you know what, if I can help you to get to this level of success, making fewer mistakes than I made, then I've played my role. I've done my job. Yeah. And so many of them already have done that very thing, just to start at the younger ages and have that humility to ask for the help and the confidence to ask for the help and be willing to, let their guard down and check their ego and all those different things that it took me a long time to do that. I had this sense that I had to act like I already knew it and then figure it out later. I wouldn't ask the questions for whatever insecurity reason, But again, I wouldn't change it because it's what got me to where I am now. Yeah. So, I love hearing that you're giving back in that regard as well. So what I want to try to do is, again, we talk about athletes, parents, coaches. Those are the primary drivers, I believe, of this type of information. And then we can even add in the aspiring trainers. But to let them walk away, I guess we'll go athletes specific. If they're currently just working with the team, just working there with their coaches, knowing they need to be doing a little bit more, but don't know where to start, is there, say, with a couple of things that they can be doing on their own prior to even making that next step of getting into a facility like yours, a direction that you can give them of where to start?
My only concern is evaluation, right?
Sure.
Like, I feel like everybody should have eyes on from a specific individual. And if they have eyes on by a coach, a medical professional, some kind of functional movement person, that goes a long way, because a lot of times you're looking at some kind of muscle length tension imbalance going on, and that's restricting an athlete from actually generating all the power that they can, right? So if I'm in this scenario where I'm like, oh, you can run sprints and that'll help, I'm sitting back and I'm like, I don't know. So a quick evaluation with a professional, I would like to say we do them for free. I say, if you want to call up and get an idea of what's going on and who's here and what's happening, that's fine. Come in, get assessed, and from that assessment, then you can start to really build out what needs to be done. Because some people come in, I've been at this for 10 years, doing these assessments for 10 years. I think 3 kids I've met in 10 years have had perfect assessments.
Wow.
Right? And we usually see, training-wise, maybe 100 people in it. We're working with 100 athletes in our rotating balance. So in that, 3 people in 10 years, perfect assessments. Yeah. So we can assess out from there, a couple bodybuilding movements that may be beneficial. Can you hit the posterior chain? And again, you got to play with it. Everything is so there's so many different variables to it, but it's like, are you pushing equal amount of what you're pulling? Because that might not work for you. Maybe you're an overhead thrower and you should be pulling 3 times as much as you push. You'd have to take a look at it, right? Are you squatting the way you should squat? How's that barbell sit? It's hard to say without being able to look at you. I say being active isn't necessarily the idea. I would always look at recovery and sleep first. Like, if I don't have hands on you, I guess this is the way I go. Do you sleep 8 to 9 hours a day? If the answer is no, get better there, right? Yeah. Are you drinking all the water that you should be drinking? Are you drinking 60% of your body weight in water? If you're not, and then you got to throw in the practice time and the game time and all that other stuff. But if you're not doing that, there's a quick way to get better right there through hydration and sleep. And then, God forbid, again, athletes are picky eaters. Every kid that I sit in front of, they're like, I don't like broccoli. And I'm like, do you like winning? Because honestly, it's like, do the ends justify the meats? Don't be such a picky eater. Get your micronutrients, get your macronutrients. Make sure you're feeling good when you're performing. And if we're doing it all there, focus in those areas, and you're usually doing pretty good. The other thing I say is I tell kids, you really want to be a good listener, right? You want to be respectful and a good listener to your parents, your teachers, your coaches. Don't be the kid out there giving the headache. Be the kid there to be, everybody should try to be the leader in their own right. In doing so, we can help everyone form this bond and be this dynamic group of help, right? We don't always want to sit there and say, oh, my coach doesn't know what he's talking about. My dad doesn't know what he's talking about. Learn to listen first, right? Most of these coaches, all these adults, all these people are older. They've been here longer. They've seen more things. Just because it's one way in your head doesn't mean that's the way it really is. So if we can all just take a step back, listen with the 2 ears we're given, close the one mouth that we have, we might be able to learn something and then adapt it to what works for us.
Amen. Man, that's awesome. So I got to start with this one, the 2 ears, one mouth. That's a Judge Judy reference right there. Is that where that comes from for you?
No, I've never even watched the Judge Judy
hilarious.
episode. I took that from church. I took that from Father Carroz over at St. Dennis.
It's absolutely brilliant. It's 100% true, but instantly my mind went to Judge Judy. That's so funny. I absolutely love that too. So that perspective, it sounds as if when you were younger, you didn't necessarily have that. I know I didn't, but to be able to influence these kids that way, man, the discipline aspect, the respect aspect, absolutely. Again, it goes back to check your ego, right? Yep. You've only been on this planet for, X 15, 16, however many years, and you feel like you know it all. And boy, do I remember being that age thinking I knew it all. But my Lord, how little we really know at that stage. So if we start there with them and get them to show respect to everybody else, and it doesn't mean take the other people at their words automatically, but be willing to listen, be willing to, decipher that information and figure it out. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I think that's something that probably gets overlooked in this regard, is the influence we have on the kids and being able to get them, be coachable. What I tell my kids, my 2 older ones, 13 and 10, I say, listen, you might be trying out for a new sport, trying out to make this team. I ask 2 things of you: be athletic and be coachable. You do those 2 things, you're going to have a shot. You're going to have an opportunity. And if you make it, great. Continue to be athletic and be coachable. If you don't make it, all right, work on the things that you need to work on, but continue to be athletic and coachable. I think those are such valuable tools. You mentioned something earlier, and I know you just got a recent certification on this. I want to kind of give people an idea of what this means and how we incorporate it, if you will, the concept of the microdosing with the training in season.
Yes. So
microdosing. Tell us a little bit about that.
I've been seeing it a lot in professional sports, and you'll see it. It's always like game day lifts. One of the guys out there, he's with the performance for the Pelicans, Daniel Bove. He came out with a book maybe about 2 years ago, the Quadrant System. And in that book, they discuss how athletes are dealing with the different stresses and then how we, as their performance enhancers, can help them go forward and deal with those stresses, and then how we have to change training for it. So what we do is we have to look at how hard practice looks like, how often competition's showing up, what level of stress these athletes are dealing with. And in doing so, how can we format training to work in their life? Now, microdosing is not a original concept. I want to say like the Olympic weightlifters, the track and field guys from the Olympics from the 70s, they were doing similar scenarios where they would have a morning practice and an afternoon practice, weight sessions, okay? So now microdosing kind of evolves. Now here we are in 2022. You got all this stuff. Corey Schlesinger, who's performance out in Phoenix Suns, comes up with this certification. He's been talking about it on social media forever. And I said, all right, let me take this because I want to see how I can incorporate it, because in our business, how often do in-season athletes not have time to get back to the gym? So now what we do is we offer it. We're really close to Arlington High School, which is awesome. So in that, I said, if you're an in-season athlete and you have 20 minutes, I can affect one particular portion of your strength curve. And in doing so, the time that you spend in your sport, the 2 months, the 3 months you may be in sport and playoffs, you're not doing anything there. You're just competing, which is another level of stress. So why do we see velocities go down at the end of the season? Why do we see kids getting hurt towards the end of the season? Why are all these things trending in the wrong direction towards the end of the season? They're not stressing their muscles the right way. So now we've come up with a scenario and we sit back and we say, how do we influence it in our way? Because these are all basketball coaches. So how do we take this idea that basketball coaches have used and put it to football? How do we put it to baseball? How do we put it to softball, soccer, all of it? And we start sussing out and speaking with the individual athletes how they feel about their practices and their competitions. Football is a little easy because they're either going to play on a Friday or Saturday. What makes it hard is if there's like an issue with the reffing and then they have to kind of expand out on the game, because then stress from one day will kind of carry over to another. But this is where we start talking. Why are you getting hurt? You're losing mobility, right? You're losing strength. There's certain things there where we start to pepper it in. So I want to say Colin Coverly, who's over with Arlington High School football, he's one of my microdose guys. And he is very consistent. After practice, he comes in for 20 minutes. We work on some self-myofascial release techniques where he's rolling out his feet, right? Feet being a big part of everything. He's stuffing his foot into a cleat. And I'm like, you got to open up those toes, guy. So now we're opening up the feet. We're working through medial longitudinal arch. We're looking at lateral gastrocnemius, vastus lateralis, rectus femoris, all these guys, right, that he normally wouldn't do because he's not coming.
Yep.
Then I sit back and I say, what's the focus for the day? Are we trying to recharge the athlete with mobility? Are we looking at kind of like tuning them up with some calisthenic work, some mobility drills like animal walking? Can we go into strength, speed, strength, where I put them on a velocity reader and we pick out a few exercises, 3 to 4 exercises, where it all leads up to that one big exercise. He's going to do some power cleans or something like that. We would do that maybe on, like, say, a Wednesday, because we know he's going to play on Friday. Thursday would be like another mobility day. We're just trying to make sure the tissue's open, because I'm trying to sit a kid who's 6'7", 315 pounds into a high school desk. So he's not sitting right? Something's wrong here. So we sit back and we say, let's make sure that you're as mobile as possible, that your hips are open, that you're not experiencing any pain, no low back pain. We're looking for all the symptoms and signs. But because I see him 6 days a week, I'm not missing a beat. We keep him feeling really good. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say this. They played Scarsdale last week. He went 3 series pancaking a kid every single play. So when you sit back and say, this is what you're producing, again, he's phenomenal with me or without me. So it's not like I did something. All I'm saying is that he feels good.
Sure.
So if we keep him feeling good that he's producing the way he's supposed to, holy smokes, where is this going to end? I don't know.
Amen.
And that's the beauty of the experiment.
That's right. Oh, that's amazing. I love it. And what comes to mind right now, I'm certain anybody that's still listening to us right now, especially these parents, they're saying, wait a minute, how do I get my child in with you? How do I get over there? Where are you located? So I know these answers, but I want you to say it. Tell these people, how can they come in and see you? Where's the facility located? And you mentioned remote training. I think this is huge. So for anyone listening that isn't nearby, it doesn't mean they can't get helped by you. How do you incorporate the remote? We can elaborate on a little bit more as well.
We're located on 55 near Arlington High School. It's 1079 Route 55. Kings of Fitness is on the sign. Amendola Group's actually on the sign as well. So you can't miss us there. Phone numbers. You can always give us a call, a text message, 914-299-1156. When my wife comes on to do the show, I'll let her give her number out, but you can get me and I'll just forward you over to her.
Brilliant.
We are internet, so website, www.kofhb.com. So Kings of Fitness, Hudson Valley. Going there, there's like a kind of contact us page. You can type in what you're looking for. Questions-wise, we can always answer there. Also, I am trying to answer everything on social media as it pops up. So we are Kings of, I think it's like Kings_of_fitness on Instagram. We're pretty active there. Kings of Fitness on Facebook. And then I think it's also Kings of Fitness on Twitter. So I'm not really good at Twitter. So I just kind of go on there and reshare what the athletes are doing, because they always post something like really cool of them performing. So I always repost that kind of stuff. Instagram, I'm pretty workable with. And then Facebook. Like the technology I'm good with is in the gym. When we start getting onto the computer, I'm trying, but we're trying to figure it out there. But just getting the information out there, whether you're close by, remote-wise, we have you video. We do a video assessment with you. We figure out what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then coaching, it's kind of, because we use an athlete management system, we use Team Builder, there's like Train Heroic out there as well. There's a bunch of different ways to get the information to you. So what we do, it's an app on your phone. You have the workout presented to you. We attach a video library of the exercise. So whatever exercise I'm trying to get you to do, there's a way to do it there. And then the other thing that we end up having to do is when we're sitting back, you just take like videos of what you're doing, and we coach it up at the end of the week. That's all. We had somebody walk in just now.
Was that?
I got a couple guys walking in right now.
Oh, awesome.
So this is perfect.
You have something. Oh, that's fantastic.
People are walking in the door right now. Sorry for the background noise.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah. Listen, you guys you're doing your job over there. I love it. That's what this is all about,
working
right?
at it hard.
Absolutely. Well, I'll say this part now for the audience. This far in, if you like this content, guys, stick around, subscribe, follow wherever you're listening to this. Share it with your friends, comment, leave a review, all those good things that my producer wants me to say. And I'll say this to you, Kyle, too. You mentioned, for me personally, when it comes to the social stuff, I need a little guidance there as well. That's why I have my producer. So if at some point you think to get you some help there, I'll give him a quick little plug. Dizzy Parker, fantastic. He's great at everything. He does all my editing. He's incredible. So that could help you as well. And I'll also say to the audience, if you want to support the channel, one of the things I can have you do is head on over to jhartfitness.com. You can check out any of the other things through there, social media, so on and so forth. But we also have a shop there with things like, I'll see if I can get it on there. This is one of my shirts. And this is my kind of catchphrase: you are worthy, you are capable. I want people to really get that to sink in. I think nowadays with this mindset thing, so many people just don't have the confidence, there's anxiety, there's depression, there's all these things, and people are so afraid of doing the work. I just want to remind people you are absolutely worthy, you are absolutely capable. And man, when we just do the work, it's amazing what we're capable of doing. And I think Kyle's an absolute testament to that. He's done the work. He doesn't take the easy way out, that's for sure. Hence West Point, Army, and doing his own thing. So Kyle, I feel like we could, yeah, man, I can't thank you enough. I feel like we could go for hours longer, and we'll definitely do it again. I can't wait.
I guarantee you my wife would say the same.
Yeah.
He'll talk your ear off.
Amen. And listen, but it's incredible information. I'm very confident that the audience is going to walk away from today feeling like, okay, I need to get in touch with Kyle and Lauren. I got to get over there. And that was the reason I had you on. So hopefully we drive some business your way. People really get to benefit from it, just as those working with you now already are. So,
thanks so much. Thank you
thanks
for the opportunity.
so much. Absolutely. And we'll see you again. And again, audience, thanks for sticking around. We'll see you next time. And until then, much love. Be well.